Hello everyone, I'm Malin. Welcome back to the grammar lesson. Today we are going to look at another type of pronoun, relative pronoun. We know pronouns are words that we use to refer to a noun or noun phrase. Like other all pronouns, these relative pronouns also we use to refer to a noun or noun phrase. It also helps to avoid the repetition of same noun. Remember, relative pronouns is a word that comes at the beginning of the relative clause to introduce that relative clause. Relative pronouns refer to a noun or noun phrase which is stand at the main clause. Okay, on the other hand, these relative pronouns we use to connect relative clause with it, main clause. Okay, sometimes you might think, what is this clause? Clause is a group of words that contains subject-verb combination. Okay everyone, let's look at one example to identify these concepts. Look at this example. The person who bought his car was my brother. Okay, this example about complex sentence because this example include two clauses, one independent clause and one dependent clause. Okay, here the person was my brother. It is a independent clause because it can stand alone by itself to convey its complete idea or thought. Here subject, person and verb was. So it includes subject-verb combination. So therefore these are clauses. This is independent clause because it can stand alone by itself to express its complete idea. Okay everyone, let's look at the next clause in this sentence. Who bought his car? So this is dependent clause because it cannot stand alone by itself to express its complete idea. It always comes with the main clause or the independent clause to convey its complete idea or to complete its idea. Okay, this clause also we can call relative clause because it begins with relative pronoun word who. Okay, here also subject who because we know subject can be a noun or pronoun. So here who act as a relative pronoun, so therefore it's a subject, and also bought is a verb, so it also include subject verb combination. We call this clause relative clause because it beginning with relative pronoun. Okay everyone, when you look at this example, it's clear this relative pronouns always stand at the beginning of the relative clause to introduce that relative clause, and also they refer to a noun or noun phrase which is stand in the main clause. Okay, as a relative clause we use word like that, which, who, whom and whose. These words we use to refer to a noun or noun phrase. Okay, remember relative pronouns always stand at the beginning of the relative clause. These relative pronouns can be a subject, object or possessive pronoun of the relative clause. Okay everyone, let's look at some example to identify relative pronouns. Okay, look at these examples. The boy who is in my class is very tall. The laptop which he bought was expensive. It is a film that enjoyed us. I know the man whose son lives in India. The woman whom I called yesterday was Sarah. Okay everyone, look at the first example. The boy who is in my class is very tall. Here who is in my class is the relative clause, and also here word who act as a relative pronouns because of it as stand at the beginning of the relative clause to reintroduce that relative clause, as well as it refer to the noun boy which is stand at the beginning of the main clause. Okay, here word who act as a subject of the relative clause. Okay, let's move with the next example. The laptop which he bought was expensive. Here which he bought is the relative clause, and also word which act as a relative pronouns because of it stand at the beginning of the relative clause to introduce that clause, and also it refer to the noun laptop. Here relative pronouns word which act as a object of the relative clause. Okay, look at the third example. It is a film that enjoyed us. Here that enjoyed us is the relative clause, and word that act as a relative pronouns because it stands at the beginning of the relative clause to introduce that clause, and also it refers to the noun film. Here that act as a subject of the relative clause. Okay, look at the next one. I know the man whose son live in India. Here also word whose act as a relative pronoun because it stand beginning of the relative clause to introduce that clause and refer to the noun man. Okay, look at the last example. The woman whom I called yesterday was Sarah. Here whom I called yesterday is the relative clause, and also here word whom act as a relative pronouns because of it also stand at the beginning of the relative clause to introduce that relative clause, and also it refer to the noun woman. Here whom act as a object of the relative clause. Okay everyone, when you look at this whole example, it's clear this relative pronouns always comes at the beginning of relative clause, and also they can be a subject or object of the relative clause. They always refer to a noun or noun phrase. Okay, in this lesson I mentioned about what is a relative clause. Okay, thank you for watching my video. See you soon with another grammar lesson. Bye bye.